This video covers how to install the Y-axis end stop. Also, it covers how to install the clamps for the Z-axis bearings and the clamp for the Y-axis bearings. You'll start with the Y-axis end stop mount and two of the number 4 1/2-inch plastite screws, which are the larger ones. First, you need to figure out which side of the end stop mount has the large holes. So one side has very large holes, the other side has small ones. We're using the large side. We want to line it up to these two holes here, and the screws are going to come through on this side, so the mount goes on the opposite side. So you're going to line up that mount, and notice that it doesn't cover up these rectangular slits. Those slits are for bearings later. And we just line up those two holes and put the plastite screws in through there. You can start them by hand and then finish them with a screwdriver. Now just tighten these down until they're almost finished, but you want to check something before you fully tighten them all the way. This is a pretty small Phillips head screwdriver. It's PH1, so hopefully you have a small tipped Phillips head at your disposal. Before that last turn of the screwdriver, flip it around and see if your spacer is crooked like in this image here. Be sure to straighten it out like this image so that whenever you do finally tighten down those two screws, that it's straight up and down like this. Finish tightening the screws while holding the spacer straight in the back. You just need to get these firm, don't over tighten them. Next, you'll attach the end stop with the 17.5-inch wire. You also need two of the number 2 1/2-inch plastite screws, which are the smaller screws. The end stop mounts to the piece you just attached. Point the mouth of the end stop to the top, and then you want to make sure you orient your YZ plate the way I have it here. And then when you line this up, I want to caution you that it seems like you should aim for the holes to be in the center of that piece. They're actually slightly to the right. When you feed in these screws, you may find yourself fishing around a bit to get them to land. When you go to tighten these down, I want to caution you just to get them snug. You don't want to over stress the body of that end stop. Get them so they seem flush and then stop. Next, you'll attach the 2 Z bearing clamps. You also need 4 of the linear bearings and 8 of the M3 16mm screws. To help with alignment during this step, grab one of the 250mm smooth rods. Gently place 2 of the bearings onto a smooth rod. Again, be gentle so you don't knock any of the ball bearings out from the inside. This will help us keep our alignment as we attach these bearings. Pick up the piece you just assembled. You're going to line this up so that it drops the 2 bearings into those rectangular slots. You may have to push them around a bit. You want to make sure that they drop all the way in. You may choose to push that rod around to kind of balance it and hold it in place. Take this plate and place it over top of the 2 bearings. And you need to watch out because this plate can slide to the left or right. So take these screws and drop them into the holes. Just get all 4 in, and then you're going to sort of tighten them all at the same time. You want to just get them all finger tight, and then you're going to tighten them down with an Allen wrench evenly. Look at each of these edges. You want them to stay parallel, more importantly on these axes, where you can see where it could go to the left or right. So once you know this is all lined up, you can tighten down the screws, but do so evenly. With mine already tightened by fingertip, I'm just going to go around and give each a quarter turn so that they stay even. So all I'm doing is going 1 screw at a time, giving a single quarter turn. Mine feel firm enough that I'm going to stop here, but you may have to do another quarter turn of each screw. Just keep checking the sides to make sure that they stay parallel to the plate below. With the smooth rod inside, I'm going to push it back and forth, and I can feel that it has a nice smooth glide side to side. I also can see that my bearings aren't rocking around. That plate is doing the job of holding them clamped in place. At this point, you're repeating the exact same steps, but on the left-hand side. So take that smooth rod, feed it through 2 new bearings, and repeat the process. If you're watching this video before starting this step, you could potentially do both sides at once if you wanted to. Again, check that the plates are parallel. This side looks good, but it's the other sides that are more important. Mine have a slight slant, so tighten the side that's too high and loosen the side that's too low. Next up's the Y bearing clamp, which goes on just like the Z bearing clamps. You also need 4 of the linear bearings, 6 of the M3 16mm screws, and again to help with alignment, I'm going to use a smooth rod, but this time I need 2 of them. Just like before, you're going to load 2 bearings onto a smooth rod. You want to do this gently because again you can knock the ball bearings out from the middle if you have to force it into place. So just prep 2 with 2 bearings on each. This step is a similar process to the one before. You're going to pick up that rod with the 2 bearings and you're going to line them up to the holes in the plate. You want to make sure those bearings are laying flat in those openings. If they're not, you're going to clamp them down at the wrong angle. So make sure they're laying flat, and then you're going to take your Y bearing clamp and you're going to place it on top. This piece is asymmetrical, so it only really lands on top in one way. Once you have the plate lined up, you can drop the screws into the 6 similarly sized holes. Get all the screws started by hand and then tighten them down with an Allen wrench. Unlike the previous bearing clamps, this one really isn't going to slant at an angle as you tighten it down. This one covers 2 rows of bearings, and it pretty much keeps itself flat as you tighten it in place. Here you can see that clamp is nice and straight, and although I said it's unlikely to be installed slanted, it's a good idea to check all the sides just in case. If anything is slanted, just tighten or loosen screws accordingly. These rods were used to help with the alignment of the 2 bearings. They slide nice and smooth because you had them installed as you tighten down the clamp on top. Now that you're finished, you can take the rods out, this clamp isn't going anywhere, and you're ready to move on to the next step.